The boardroom fell silent. Every eye turned to the young Latina woman standing at the front, her presentation materials still glowing on the screen behind her. And then he said it, loud enough for everyone to hear. "It's ridiculous that you'd let some server like Sophia stand here and lecture us on how to handle the company's major projects." Dominic Sterling's voice dripped with venom as he continued. "It's shameful that my father would let someone like her climb to this position." Sophia's hands trembled. Her heart pounded. In that moment, she faced a choice that would define everything. Would she break? Or would she stand tall, no matter the cost? But to understand this moment, to truly understand what brought Sophia Martinez to this breaking point, we need to go back. Back to where it all began, in a little diner on the south side of Chicago, where one ordinary morning became the day that changed everything. Let me tell you about Sophia Martinez. She was 23 years old, and if you saw her rushing between tables at the Silver Kettle Diner, you might think you knew her story. Just another server, trying to make ends meet in the big city. But you'd be wrong. Sophia's life was a tightrope stretched between two worlds. By day, she moved through the diner with practiced grace, remembering that Mr. Peterson liked his coffee black with 2 sugars, that Mrs. Williams couldn't stand onions, that the elderly couple by the window always split the pecan pie. She smiled through exhaustion, her feet aching in worn-out shoes that she couldn't afford to replace. But at night, Sophia transformed. She became an engineering student at the Illinois Institute of Technology, hunched over blueprints and calculations, designing structures that could touch the sky. She dreamed of buildings that didn't just scrape the heavens. She dreamed of structures that could make a difference, that could bring communities together, that could stand as symbols of hope. Yet there was something else. Something that weighed on Sophia's shoulders every single day, heavier than any textbook or tray of dishes. Her 13-year-old sister, Elena. Elena had been diagnosed with a severe autoimmune disorder when she was just 9 years old. The kind of illness that doesn't just make you tired, it attacks your body from the inside, leaving you weak and in constant pain. The medications Elena needed weren't the kind you could pick up at any pharmacy. They were specialized, expensive, the kind that insurance companies loved to deny. Every month, Sophia watched the medical bills pile up like an insurmountable mountain, each one a reminder of how fragile their situation really was. The Silver Kettle wasn't just a job to Sophia. It was a sanctuary. Mrs. Chun, the owner, was a small Chinese woman with knowing eyes and a warm smile that could melt the coldest Chicago winter. She had a gift for sensing exactly when Sophia was pushing herself too hard, when she needed a moment to breathe, when the weight of the world was about to crush her. Mrs. Chun never said much, but she'd slide an extra piece of pie across the counter, or give Sophia's hand a gentle squeeze, and somehow that was enough. That morning started like any other. The diner hummed with its familiar rhythm, the clink of forks against plates, the murmur of conversations, the hiss of the coffee machine. Regular customers chatted in their usual booths. The smell of bacon and fresh coffee filled the air. Everything felt safe, normal, home. And then the door opened. It wasn't the friendly chime of a regular customer. It wasn't the curious jingle of a first-time visitor discovering a hidden gem. It was different, harsh, cold, like the door itself was announcing that someone important had arrived, and everyone better pay attention. Dominic Sterling walked in like he owned the place. At 28, he was tall and handsome in that sharp, polished way that money can buy. Designer suit, expensive watch, hair perfectly styled. But it was his eyes that caught Sophia's attention, cold, blue, and utterly devoid of warmth. He looked around the diner like he was inspecting property, not entering a place where real people lived real lives. Behind him trailed 2 other young men, clearly friends trying to match his confidence but falling short. They wore the same designer labels, the same practiced expressions of bored superiority. Sophia watched as Dominic's gaze swept across the room and landed on a booth by the window. An elderly couple sat there, holding hands across the table, celebrating their wedding anniversary. You could see the love between them, decades of memories reflected in their gentle smiles. Dominic pointed at them with barely concealed contempt. "Move them. I want that table. Now." The entire diner seemed to hold its breath. Sophia stepped forward, her server's smile still in place, her voice professional and calm. "I'm sorry, sir, but that table is occupied. They arrived first and are still enjoying their meal. We have several other tables available if you'd like to." "Do you not understand English?" Dominic cut her off, his voice rising. His eyes raked over her. Her worn shoes, her name tag, her brown skin, her dark hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. Or is it too hard for someone like you? People like you don't get to argue with me. Do. As. I say. Heat flooded Sophia's chest. She'd heard that tone before. Seen that look. The kind of contempt that reduces you to nothing, that tells you your existence is an inconvenience to people who matter. She'd faced it on the street, in stores, even sometimes at school. But here, in front of Mrs. Chun and the customers she'd come to love like family, something inside her refused to back down. She squared her shoulders, looked Dominic straight in the eye, and spoke with quiet clarity. Sir, I understand exactly what you're saying. And I'm telling you just as clearly, we don't accommodate demands like that here. Everyone is treated equally. If you can't wait for a table, you're welcome to leave. Dominic froze. Shock flashed across his face, followed immediately by rage. No one, especially not a young Latina server in a cheap diner, had ever dared to say no to him before. The silence in the diner was deafening. Every customer, every server, even Mrs. Chun behind the counter, watched with held breath. And then Dominic smiled. But it wasn't a friendly smile. It was cruel, mocking, designed to wound as deeply as possible. You really don't get it, do you? His voice dropped low, dripping with sarcasm. Maybe you're just not smart enough to understand that the customer is always right. Perhaps you're used to places where nobody taught you about courtesy, about knowing your place. Each word was a knife, deliberately cutting at Sophia's pride, her dignity, her very worth as a human being. Sophia said nothing. She could feel the anger building inside her, but she knew she couldn't lose control. She drew a steady breath and kept her voice calm. Sir, as I've already explained, every customer here is treated with equal respect. No one has the right to demand someone else leave just because they want their seat. Please respect that basic rule. Dominic's face flushed crimson. His hands trembled with rage. He took a step closer to Sophia, towering over her, using his height to intimidate. You sure are stubborn. Fine. Let's see how long you can hold out. He reached into his vest pocket and pulled out a thick stack of $100 bills. Fresh, green, the symbol of power he believed could bend anyone to his will. He peeled off several bills, held them high for everyone to see, and then, with deliberate cruelty, flung them onto the worn tile floor at Sophia's feet. Is this what you want? He taunted. Go ahead. Bend down and pick them up. I'm sure that's the only language someone like you understands. A collective gasp rippled through the diner. Some customers shook their heads in disbelief. Others looked away, ashamed to witness such cruelty. Mrs. Chen's hand flew to her mouth. Sophia stood completely still, looking down at the bills scattered across the floor. This wasn't just about her anymore. This was about every person who'd ever been told they were less than human because of the color of their skin, their background, their place in the world. She lifted her eyes to meet Dominic's, and when she spoke, her voice rang clear and strong through the silence. Mr. Sterling, some things can't be bought, especially self-respect, and the basic respect owed to another human being. If you can't understand that simple truth, then you're in the wrong place. Dominic froze. He clearly hadn't expected such strength, such unwavering dignity from someone he'd assumed was beneath him. And then something inside him snapped. His hand shot out and grabbed Sophia's wrist, his fingers digging in hard enough to hurt. Who do you think you are? He snarled, twisting her arm. Pain shot up Sophia's arm, but something else kicked in. Years of protecting Elena from bullies, from people who'd tried to hurt them because of who they were. Her instincts took over. In one swift motion, Sophia twisted her wrist free and drove her palm into Dominic's chest. He hadn't expected resistance. His expensive leather shoes slipped on the polished floor, and he crashed backward, landing hard on the tiles. The thud echoed through the stunned diner. Dominic Sterling, heir to a billion-dollar empire, lay sprawled on the floor of a working-class diner, staring up in complete shock at the young woman he'd tried to humiliate. Sophia stood over him, breathing hard, her wrist throbbing where he'd grabbed her. But her expression remained calm, resolute. No fear. No weakness. Slowly, Dominic scrambled to his feet, his face burning with shame and rage. He pointed at Sophia, his voice dropping to a cold, deadly whisper that somehow carried to every corner of the room. You will regret this day. I swear it. I will destroy your life so completely, you'll wish you were never born. That's my promise to you. With that, he turned and stormed out, his friends scrambling after him. The door slammed shut with a harsh clang of the bell. For a moment, no one moved. And then, slowly, applause began. First one customer, then another, until half the diner was clapping. Mrs. Chun rushed over and wrapped Sophia in a tight hug, her voice shaking. "You did the right thing, Mija. I'm so proud of you." But Sophia barely heard her. Her eyes were fixed on the door, on the empty space where Dominic had stood. His words echoed in her mind. "I will destroy your life." And Sophia knew, deep in her bones, that he meant every word. That night, she couldn't sleep. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling of the tiny apartment she shared with Elena, rubbing the bruise forming on her wrist. Had she just gambled away everything? Her job? Her education? Elena's medical care? The thought of Elena made her chest tighten with fear. Her baby sister, so fragile, so dependent on the medications that Sophia could barely afford even now. What would happen if she lost her job? If she couldn't pay for Elena's treatments? The next morning came too soon. Sophia dragged herself back to the silver kettle, her stomach churning with dread. Every time the door opened, she startled, half expecting to see a lawyer with termination papers or worse. And then, around mid-morning, the door opened again. This time, it wasn't Dominic who walked in. It was a man in his late 50s, tall and commanding, with salt and pepper hair perfectly groomed and a black suit that probably cost more than Sophia made in 6 months. His presence filled the entire diner. Conversations died. Forks paused midair. Even Mrs. Chun went pale. Because everyone in Chicago knew that face. Richard Sterling, founder and CEO of Sterling Industries. The man whose skyscrapers define the Chicago skyline. The man whose decisions shaped the lives of thousands. Dominic's father. Sophia's heart dropped into her stomach as Richard Sterling's eyes found her across the diner. He walked toward her with measured steps, and Sophia felt like she was watching her entire future collapse with each footfall. When he reached her, he spoke quietly, his voice deep and controlled. "Miss Martinez, I believe we need to talk. In private." Sophia glanced at Mrs. Chun, whose worried eyes offered silent support. Taking a shaky breath, Sophia nodded. "Yes, sir. We can use the back room." She led him past the kitchen, feeling the weight of every stare following them. When the door clicked shut behind them, Sophia turned to face Richard Sterling, preparing herself for the worst. But what he said next would change everything. Richard Sterling stood in the cramped back room of the Silver Kettle, looking completely out of place among the stacked boxes of napkins and industrial-sized cans of coffee. But his eyes, sharp, penetrating, the same icy blue as his son's, held something Sophia hadn't expected. They held sadness. "Miss Martinez," he began, his voice measured and calm. "I'm not here to threaten you. I'm here to listen. I want you to tell me exactly what happened yesterday. Every detail. From your perspective." Sophia's heart pounded. She'd prepared herself for accusations, for legal threats, for the full weight of Sterling power crushing down on her. But this threw her completely off balance. Still, she had nothing to hide. So she told him everything. Dominic's arrogant demand. His racist insults. The money thrown at her feet. The moment he grabbed her wrist and she defended herself. She spoke honestly, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her veins. Richard listened without interrupting. As she spoke, his expression darkened, his jaw tightened, and when she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Then he sighed, a deep, heavy sound that seemed to carry years of disappointment. "I came here this morning bracing myself for an unpleasant truth about my son," he said quietly. "And your story confirmed my deepest fears." He looked up at Sophia, and she saw something she never expected to see in the eyes of such a powerful man: shame. "I'm not here to defend Dominic or blame you, Miss Martinez. In fact, I owe you an apology. You endured things no one should ever face, especially at the hands of my own son." Sophia stared at him, speechless. Richard continued, his voice heavy with regret. "I've spent my entire life building Sterling Industries, creating wealth and prestige for my family. But I neglected the one responsibility that truly mattered: raising a decent, responsible son. Dominic is my greatest failure, and I don't know if I have enough time left to fix it." He paused, meeting her eyes with unexpected earnestness. But yesterday, for the first time in his privileged life, he met someone who wasn't intimidated by his money or his name. Someone who stood up to him without fear. That someone was you. Sophia felt a flicker of warmth at his words, but also deep confusion. "Where was this going?" "You're the only person who's ever truly challenged him," Richard said. "And whether he realizes it yet or not, you taught him a lesson I never could." He reached into his suit pocket and pulled out a small envelope, placing it on the table between them. Which is why I'm here with an offer. One that could change your future. Sophia's pulse quickened, not with fear this time, but with cautious curiosity. I know you're studying engineering at Illinois Institute of Technology, Richard continued. I know about Elena and her medical condition. I know about the insurance denials, the mounting bills, the treatments she desperately needs but can't afford. He leaned forward slightly. I want to help you, Sophia. I want to cover the rest of your tuition. All of it. And I want to ensure that Elena receives the best medical care available. The biologics therapy at Northwestern Memorial that her insurance keeps denying? She'll have it. No questions asked. No cost to you. Ever. Sophia's breath caught in her throat. Years of financial desperation, of lying awake at night terrified that one medical emergency would destroy them both. All of it could vanish with this man's promise. Tears pricked her eyes, but she blinked them back. Why? She whispered. Why would you do this for us? Richard's expression grew harder, more determined. Because there's a condition, Miss Martinez. One I know you'll find difficult to accept. And there it was. The trap she'd been waiting for. I want you to work for Sterling Industries, Richard said, his voice steady and unyielding. Directly under Dominic. I need you to be there, to challenge him, to be a living example of the dignity and respect he's never understood. This is my last chance to save my son from destroying himself. And I believe you're the only person who can do it. Sophia felt like she'd been punched in the gut. Work under Dominic? Face the man who'd assaulted and humiliated her every single day? Be a tool for his rehabilitation? No. The word burst from her lips before she could stop it. Mr. Sterling, do you have any idea what you're asking? Do you understand how humiliating, how painful it would be for me to work under someone who treated me like I was nothing? I do, Richard said quietly. And I know it's unreasonable. But Sophia, think beyond this moment. Think about Elena. Without that biologics therapy, her condition will deteriorate. The doctors have been clear about that. You're running out of time. Sophia's hands trembled. She thought of Elena's fragile smile, her brave face when the pain got so bad she could barely move. Her baby sister, who depended on her for everything. I need to think, Sophia whispered, tears finally spilling down her cheeks. Take all the time you need, Richard said gently, rising to leave. But remember, your decision today will change both your lives forever. I hope you'll make the choice that's right for you. He left her alone in that small back room, and Sophia sank into a chair, her entire world crashing down around her. That night was the longest of Sophia's life. She lay awake in their tiny apartment, listening to Elena's soft breathing from the other bed. Her little sister slept peacefully, unaware of the impossible choice hanging over them both. Sophia stared at the ceiling, her mind racing. Could she really do it? Could she walk into Sterling Industries every day and face the man who'd tried to break her? Could she sacrifice her pride, her dignity, for Elena's sake? But then she thought about what would happen if she said no. Elena's medications were already stretching their budget to the breaking point. The biologics therapy she needed cost tens of thousands of dollars per treatment. Their insurance had denied it 3 times already. Without it, Elena's doctors said her condition would worsen, possibly become life-threatening. Sophia turned her head and watched her sister sleep. Elena was only 13. She had her whole life ahead of her. She deserved to grow up healthy, to go to college, to fall in love, to chase her dreams. Could Sophia really let her pride stand in the way of that? By dawn, Sophia had made her decision. But she wasn't going to accept Richard Sterling's terms without making her own. The next morning, Sophia called the number on the card Richard had left her. Within an hour, she was back in that same private room, face to face with one of the most powerful men in America. But this time, Sophia wasn't afraid. Mr. Sterling, she said, her voice clear and strong. I've thought about your offer, and I'll accept it, but only on my terms. Richard's eyebrows rose in surprise. Clearly, he hadn't expected her to negotiate. Sophia took a deep breath and laid out her conditions, each one carefully thought through during her sleepless night. First, I will never be involved in Dominic's personal life. I'm not his therapist, his life coach, or his redemption project. I agree to a purely professional working relationship, and nothing beyond that. Richard nodded slowly, listening intently. Second, I need a direct line to you and to the chief engineer at Sterling Industries. If anyone, including Dominic, tries to pressure me unfairly or create a hostile work environment, I must be able to report it directly to you without going through normal channels. Agreed, Richard said, genuine respect showing in his eyes. Sophia's voice grew stronger. And finally, this is non-negotiable. If Dominic ever discriminates against me, insults me, or treats me with violence again, our agreement ends immediately. But your support for Elena's medical care continues unconditionally. I will not sacrifice my safety or my dignity, even for my sister's sake. That is my boundary, Mr. Sterling. Take it or leave it. The room fell silent. Richard studied her for a long moment, and Sophia saw something shift in his expression, from surprise to admiration to genuine respect. Finally, he stood and extended his hand. Miss Martinez, I admit I underestimated you. Your courage and clarity exceed anything I imagined. I accept every condition you've set. You have my word. This time, when they shook hands, it wasn't about power or coercion. It was an agreement between equals. Sophia's first day at Sterling Industries was surreal. The gleaming marble lobby, the executive elevators, the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Chicago's skyline. It was a world away from the Silver Kettle's cracked vinyl booths. When the elevator doors opened on the executive floor, Sophia stepped out with her head held high. She spotted Dominic immediately, standing behind a massive desk, the picture of corporate confidence. The moment he saw her, his expression froze. Shock, confusion, and rage flashed across his face in rapid succession. Well, he finally said, recovering his composure with visible effort. What a surprise. I never would have guessed a little server could climb her way all the way up here. I'll admit, your sales pitch to my father was impressive. Sophia met his gaze without flinching. I'm here because of my ability and my determination, Dominic. From now on, I expect nothing less than a professional working relationship. His jaw clenched. He stepped closer, lowering his voice to a threatening whisper. Don't think for a second that having my father's backing gives you license to act superior here. I'll be watching your every move. And trust me, the moment you make a mistake, you'll regret accepting this job. Sophia kept her voice steady and cold. I have no intention of making mistakes. But I also won't stand by and let you bully me. If you have a problem working with me, take it up with your father. He's the one who hired me. Dominic looked like he'd been slapped. For a moment, he seemed genuinely at a loss for words. Then, without another word, he turned and stalked away. Sophia walked to her assigned desk and sat down, her heart pounding. She knew this was only the beginning. The months that followed were a silent war. Dominic did everything he could to make Sophia fail. He gave her impossible deadlines. He withheld crucial information. He made snide comments about her background in front of colleagues. But Sophia was ready for him. For every obstacle he threw in her path, she found a solution. She worked twice as hard as anyone else, stayed twice as late, produced work that was twice as good. She asked colleagues she trusted for the information Dominic withheld. She met every impossible deadline with flawless results. And slowly, the other employees began to notice. They saw Sophia's brilliance, her composure under pressure, her refusal to be intimidated. They saw Dominic's frustration growing as none of his tactics worked. And they began to respect her, not just for her work, but for her courage. One afternoon, Dominic called Sophia into a conference room and dropped a massive project binder on the table. I need a complete analysis of this in 2 hours, he said with a smirk. Think you can handle it? It was clearly impossible, the kind of assignment designed to ensure failure. Sophia looked at the binder, then at Dominic, and smiled calmly. I'll do my best. 2 hours later, she walked into his office and placed a perfectly organized, brilliantly analyzed report on his desk. Dominic stared at it in disbelief, unable to accept that she'd accomplished what should have been impossible. The other employees who'd witnessed the exchange exchanged knowing glances. Sophia had won again. The final confrontation came during a crucial board meeting 6 months after Sophia had started at Sterling Industries. She'd been working on an innovative engineering proposal for weeks, a design that could revolutionize how Sterling Industries approached sustainable urban development. When she presented it to the board, the room erupted in applause. Even Richard, sitting at the head of the table, nodded with obvious pride. But Dominic couldn't take it anymore. He shot to his feet, his chair screeching across the floor. Enough, he shouted. It's ridiculous that you'd let some server like Sophia stand here and lecture us on how to handle the company's major projects. The room fell silent, shock rippling through every person present. Dominic's face was red with rage. It's shameful that my father would let someone like her climb to this position. I refuse to sit here and listen to. Hunter, that is enough. Richard's voice cracked like thunder. He stood slowly, his face colder than Sophia had ever seen it. Every person in the room seemed to shrink under his gaze, except Sophia. You have crossed a line, Richard said, his voice deadly quiet, but carrying to every corner of the room. This is the first and last time I will allow you to insult anyone in this company, especially Miss Martinez. You haven't just insulted a talented professional. You've shown intolerable immaturity, ignorance, and bigotry. Dominic opened his mouth to respond, but Richard cut him off. I brought Sophia into this company because her skill, courage, and intellect surpass anyone in this room, especially you. If you can't recognize that, then perhaps it's you who doesn't belong here. The silence was absolute. Richard turned to Sophia, his expression softening with genuine regret. Miss Martinez, on behalf of Sterling Industries and myself, I sincerely apologize for those hurtful remarks. Please know this does not represent who we are. Sophia felt tears sting her eyes, tears of exhaustion, vindication, and heartbreak all at once. She'd won, but the victory felt hollow. When the meeting ended, Sophia returned to her desk and sat in silence. She'd proven she could survive in this world. She'd shown everyone, including Dominic, that her worth had nothing to do with her background or skin color. But she was tired. So tired. That night, Sophia made her decision. She would leave Sterling Industries. On her last day, Sophia was gathering her things when she heard footsteps behind her. She turned to find Dominic standing there, looking more uncertain than she'd ever seen him. Sophia, he said quietly, can we talk? She hesitated, then nodded. Dominic took a deep breath, clearly struggling with every word. I know this apology is probably too late. I know you may never forgive me. But I need you to know I'm sorry. For everything. The racist things I said, the way I treated you. It was the worst thing I've ever done. Sophia studied his face, searching for deception. But all she saw was genuine shame. After my father called me out in front of everyone, Dominic continued, I realized how selfish and narrow-minded I've been. I grew up believing I was better than other people. But you showed me that a person's worth has nothing to do with skin color or background. You're the first person who ever made me see how wrong I was. Sophia was quiet for a moment. Then she said softly, I accept your apology, Dominic. I don't think we can ever be friends. But I hope you truly change from this day forward. And I hope you never treat anyone else the way you treated me. I promise, Dominic said, and for the first time she believed him. Thank you, Sophia, for not giving up on me, even when I gave you every reason to. As he walked away, Sophia felt a weight lift from her shoulders. Richard was waiting by the elevator. I'm in awe of your strength, he said simply. I'll keep my word about Elena's care and your tuition. It's the least I can do. Thank you, Mr. Sterling, Sophia replied. I believe you will. She stepped into the elevator and descended to the ground floor. As she walked out into the bright Chicago afternoon, Sophia felt the sun warm on her face. She'd left Sterling Industries, but she was taking something far more valuable with her. Her dignity, her self-respect, and the knowledge that she'd stood up to injustice and won. Not with money, not with power, but with courage. Sophia Martinez walked forward into her future, head held high, knowing that her real change of destiny had nothing to do with corporate jobs or wealthy benefactors. It had everything to do with the strength she'd found within herself. So let me ask you, if you were Sophia, would you have had the courage to defend your dignity, no matter the cost? Would you have been able to stand tall when the whole world seemed designed to make you bow? Her story reminds us that true worth isn't determined by wealth, status, or the color of our skin. It's determined by character, by integrity, by the courage to fight for what's right even when the odds are stacked against us. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Let's spread the message that dignity and respect aren't privileges. They're human rights that belong to everyone. Thank you for listening to Sophia's story. Until next time, stand tall, stand proud, and never let anyone tell you that you're worth less than you are.